world, if you see the entire history of this world is full of bloodbath, it's full of violence and everywhere. And today, the violence is not in form of blood, but it's in form of competition at workplace. It's competition everywhere. There is gender fights. There all kinds of things are happening in the world. People are always at conflict. And
Very true.
so how do you find the true meaning of life in this conflict? What is the way ahead? How to move ahead? Where most of the things tell you believe in this, believe in that, believe in that. This is one place after reading a lot of science, I realize here it says just believe in yourself because all the answers are inside you. And it talks about cause and effect theory. It talks about the quanta theory, the principle of subparticles. It talks about the cosmos. So for me, it's a very good combination of explaining science to people in a very practical way. So that's what I would say.
That's a very
Vivek,
interesting take.
इधर है
I
तो
don't think I've heard that one before. So, same question to Shaheen ma'am. If you had to recommend one book that you think everyone should read before they, uh, I don't know, stop reading maybe. So, what would your recommendation be?
That's a really hard question. First, I'm going to give you the least intellectual answer it is possible for a human being. And I'm going to say Harry Potter because I say that anytime anybody asks me about books, if you're talking about, it just makes me happy. It just makes me feel good. It's been something that I've gone to my whole life to, to make sense of things and just be at peace with my surroundings because I feel like escapism is rather underrated. So that's a very unintellectual answer that I've given you. But other than that, I think there's a really, really good book by an author called Matt Haig called Reasons to Stay Alive. And it kind of focuses on mental health. And, that's an area in which I sort of,
हेलो
I
विवेक
think
किधर
a
है
lot
ब्रो?
of, we
अभी
don't
तेरा
have
बैकअप
as
स्ट्रीम क्यों दिखा रहा है?
much
बंद कर.
focus on as we should. So I would say
Right.
किधर है
fantastic book to
विवेक?
just sort of
हेलो
understand the
विवेक
effects
इमरजेंसी में है क्या? नहीं
that
आवाज
poor mental health can have on a
है ना
person
इमरजेंसी
and
म्यूट पे है ना?
how
कॉल कर
important it
जल्दी
is
कर
to
उसको.
safeguard your mental
वही
health.
कर रहा
Absolutely.
भाई
So,
उसका कॉल होल्ड स्क्रीन पे कब से
thank
है?
you for both of your recommendations. Now, I would like to welcome Kumar Vishwas sir. He is a poet, politician, a
किधर है कुमार
lecturer.
विश्वास?
And Kumar Vishwas has also starred as a guest judge in various mainstream shows such as Indian Idol, Saregama, Pa Little Champs, The Kapil Sharma Show, and has also presented Tarpan,
कुमार
a
विश्वास
musical
किधर है ब्रो?
poetry
मेरे पे है
series
नहीं
where
है
he
ना?
would recite poems
नहीं
of
नहीं मेरे को
famous
नहीं दिख रहा
historians.
देख
So,
वापस
a
देख.
very, very warm welcome to all of our panelists. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy
है
schedules
नहीं है ना?
to interact with us.
नहीं है
It
नहीं है
genuinely
नहीं
means
है
the world.
ठीक है
So, let
सर
me
सर.
just give you a brief introduction to why we've chosen to discuss
नहीं
this,
है
and
कुमार
then we
विश्वास
can
नहीं है
jump straight
सुन
in without
यूट्यूब पे
wasting
देख
any more
बराबर है.
time. It could be argued that
वीबी बैग
about
सुन आ
all
रहा है
forms of art,
इसीलिए तो
literature
बोला
is the
विवेक को
medium
कॉल
that
कर.
allows for the
नहीं
most
विवेक
freedom
का स्ट्रीम
with
स्टार्ट हो
regards
गया
to the relationship
बस
between
ये
the
यूट्यूब
author
का
and the
लैग हो
reader.
रहा है थोड़ा सा
This
मतलब
is
10 सेकंड
something
का
that
लैग है ना
makes literature the
ठीक
truest
है
and the
तो मैं
freest
अपना
art
स्टार्ट करूँ
form.
फिर.
Of course,
है
literary freedom not only
आगे आगे
alludes
ऑन.
to freedom of
ठीक है
imagination, but also to the
शॉर्ट
freedom
शॉर्ट
of
शॉर्ट
what
हो
content is recorded
मेरा
on
भी स्टार्ट
page.
है उसको बोल दे
In
अगर
many
उसका गया
countries
तो
around the
सीन नहीं है
world,
फिर.
some topics
ठीक है
simply are
ठीक
forbidden and
उसको
should
और
भेजो
उसको
not
ना
be
लेके आ
written
डिस्कॉर्ड
about.
पे लेके आ
So the
डिस्कॉर्ड पे जल्दी.
conundrum of literary
हाँ हाँ
freedom in as how I see it as a college student, it culminates with some of these very complicated ideas. And I think that this panel is perfect to help, explain to us where all of these little things stem from. So to start off, I would
लेके
first
आ
like
डिस्कॉर्ड पे जल्दी.
conundrum of literature on the exact definition of literary freedom, because it would be varied when you look at different art forms or like different styles of writing. So opinions on that, please. Um, Wait, was I audible this whole time?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Vivek sir, if you'd like to answer that or give us a direction.
See, I mean, yeah, I mean, see, I'm totally, my whole line of thinking is very different, so it may not please lots of people. See, as far as freedom is concerned, freedom is also just a story. It's a fiction. are conditioned with, that there is something called freedom, because you're not free. First of all, your body is not, all your cells
विवेक हाँ
are
कुमार की
not free.
तरह
They all come with conditioning of memory of millions of years. Your
मैंने
mind
उसको
is
अभी तक के लिए
conditioned by
ब्लैक किया
your,
मना नहीं
when you
पड़ता
are
अभी के लिए
born,
तो
you
मेरे
don't
इसमें
have a choice. You don't have a freedom to choose your nationality, your religion, your
ठीक है
beliefs, and
मेरा भी
all those
स्टार्ट है
things.
हाँ
This
चल
is
रहा है
all, it's like a product
सब
comes out,
टोटल
somebody
हाँ
stamps
हाँ
you and says, hey, you are a Muslim or a Christian or a Hindu or Buddhist or whatever, and all your life you just follow that dogma and you carry
आएगा
it as
मतलब
baggage, or you are Indian, or I'm this and I'm that, and I'm middle class and I'm upper class. So all these things are not your choice. So
भाई
you have
तो
no
किधर गया
freedom.
था इतने टाइम
And then as
डिस्कॉर्ड
you
से
grow up, your schooling, your college, your education, advertising, messaging,
ठीक
communication,
है
radio, TV,
क्या बोला
blah,
वो
blah,
बोला
blah,
रहेगा
social
कुछ
media now. There is so much of noise around us that your mind is always conditioned. You feel, you are told that you are free, but actually you are not free, because whatever
मैं
you are
चिल हो गया
doing is coming
थोड़ी
from
सी
whatever noise you are part of. So to say, hey, make me free. If you want to be free, I think the best way to be free is that you stop talking about anything. You stop listening to things. Then you are free. Then you are in solitude. Go somewhere else and just listen to your inner voice. So you cannot be free. First of all, this whole concept of freedom is very utopian and it's a very Western. And
उसका
that's
आवाज
why
आ रहा
you see in Indian language, Hindi language, there is no real translation of freedom. We have translation for liberation, which is like, what is liberation from? Liberation from all this noise, when you get out of this noise. Okay, so that is a very philosophical answer, and which is the right answer, which is actually the truth. But who wants to listen to the truth? So there's no freedom to speak the truth. So therefore, let me just tell you the untruth. Okay, so which is this, that yes, everybody should have freedom to write and speak anything, undoubtedly. But then freedom of speech doesn't come with freedom of consequences. I say lots of things for which I am abused, trolled, people issue fatwa against me, but I keep saying it because I am prepared for those consequences. So people without courage should not demand too much of freedom. People who are scared, people who want a convenient thing, they should write convenient things. And if you want to write things to provoke people or to incite people or to help people question things, if you want to talk rebellious things, you want to, or if you not deliberately but indirectly also, if you say things which can hurt lots of dogmas, break lots of old beliefs, then you should be ready to face the consequences. Be the Socrates. Why do you want to be a very privileged class and say, hey, I said something? Because you should be aware that what will be the consequences. If you're not, then please don't get into creativity, first of all. Second thing is, yes, I believe in absolute freedom of speech, free speech. But as far as books and creative material, poetry, and all these things are concerned, I don't think creative people should bother too much about it, because anyway, not too many people read books. Unless it's Harry Potter, one of my favorite books. But then J.K. Rowling is also under attack these days. People are canceling her also, okay, for saying things, speaking her
Right.
mind in one of the freest country in the world. So this freedom concept is very subjective. It's a very convenient, it's a very political issue. Whenever somebody uses the word
Right.
freedom, I know this person has some kind of a political ideology. People who actually believe in freedom don't talk about freedom.
That's very interesting approach to that, sir. Shaheen ma'am, could we have your take on this?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a sort of textbook definition that you would have of literary freedom, which basically means that the freedom an author has to express his or her views without any fear of punitive action from either state or any kind of societal structure. So that's any societal group at large. But I think aside from that, I think what it also means, aside from having the freedom to sort of express oneself in a way one wants, I think it also means sort of protecting the right of a wider group or a wider community to access or enjoy that literary culture. That in itself is also literary freedom. It's not enough for you to be able to say what you want to say, but then the group at large also has to have the ability to access what you are saying and access the words that you're saying. Which at the end of the day, I think I guess it boils down to quite a simple question, right? Is literary freedom nothing but an absence of censorship? And is the conversation that we're really having a conversation about censorship, whether that is, wider censorship or self-censorship? Because very often when you're talking about literary freedom, if you're writing from a point where you do not feel that you are free, it is often self-censorship over state censorship that does become the problem, or societal censorship that becomes the problem. So if there is an absence of censorship, then there's so many other questions that arise, right?
Right.
There's no, if you're saying that literary freedom is not censorship, not having censorship, are there, what situations is it okay to be censored in? Because are there situations where you can look at, protecting the wider cultural group as a large and do censorship in a situation like that? In that case, fine. Do writers actually have, are you talking about privileges that are other than freedom of speech? Because that's a privilege that, again, society as a whole has access to. Are you saying writers have privileges that are different than the larger societal group? Do you have better immunity because you're acting as a sort of voice for your larger community? So I mean, there's a lot of questions I think that comes with it, but I think fundamentally, I suppose it is the question or the debate is it just that? Is it an absence of censorship?
Right. So I find it very interesting that both of you have mentioned censorship in one way or another. So my next question to you guys would be, how does accountability and responsibility tie in with this concept of literary freedom that is bestowed upon an author? Because intrinsically as well, they have a certain degree of creative freedom, if you'd want to call it. So how does that tie into this entire situation?
So I'll go ahead and answer that. So
Absolutely.
I think exactly like Vivek said, I don't think freedom of speech comes with freedom of consequences, right? You have to be very aware of the fact that you might be able to exercise your right to free speech, but that does not mean that you're going to be immune to the effects of that. So in a personal capacity, I genuinely believe that literary freedom or freedom of speech generally is a responsibility as much as it is a privilege. I don't think that you can sort of free yourself from that responsibility. But again, that responsibility means different things to different people. I'll just use myself as an example. I have a platform from which I talk a lot about mental health. I use that platform very mindfully. When I'm talking about mental health, I very often talk about topics that are rather sensitive. I talk about suicide. I talk about a lot of things that are very sensitive. But I'm capable of, in my own sort of understanding, I sort of am very discerning in the way that I talk about these things, because I recognize that I have a responsibility when I'm talking about certain things. I have a responsibility to ensure that I have a platform that reaches people, so I'm not being discriminatory or promoting hate speech in any kind of way. And I mean, I think again that's kind of what it comes down to, right? When you're talking about responsibility, you're talking about, can you protect free speech, but at the same time deal with hate speech whilst protecting your freedom of speech? And I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to deal with that. And fundamentally, I think that you can actually tackle the issue of hate speech with free speech itself by you always provide a counter opinion. So yeah, I mean, I think that it does come with responsibility. And I think that it's a responsibility that everybody has to be discerning enough to sort of exercise.
Absolutely. Vivek, so would you like to add a new perspective to it? So, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay, okay.
So you're asking me, right?
Yes, so if you'd like to add on anything to what Shahi ma'am said.
Well, yeah, what she said, I totally agree with her. And see, a writer or a singer or a lyricist or a filmmaker, see, we are what? We are storytellers. Whether you write fiction or non-fiction, we are all storytellers. So your first responsibility is to tell a story which is comprehensible. That is your first responsibility. Second thing is, it is of some consumption. It should have some value to consume. If it is totally, I mean, you don't eat food which can't be consumed. So a story should be of some use to somebody. And the third thing is, it should also give you some kind of a new knowledge. Otherwise, what's the point of telling it? That's what I feel. That's where the responsibility comes in. And the second thing is the consequences, the impact. And so responsible is actually, the word is responsible, which means you are able to respond in a situation. And there have been thousands and thousands of writers. There is no, I mean, the list is very, very long. If you have to make a list of authors who were banned, killed, hanged, assassinated, or whose careers were taken, who were cancelled in society for writing something which was provocative. What is provocative? There are two ways to look at it. Number one is, I deliberately hurt you. You are talking to me. I deliberately say something which hurts you very well, knowing that it's going to hurt you. That I think is a very bad act on any human being's part, because we are not animals, so we are not supposed to hurt others. And the second thing is that you are saying something new. You are saying Earth is not flat. You are saying you are coming with a new theory, and that theory over a period of time is going to be tested or falsified. But because people do not know, and people believe in dogmas, people feel very secure in dogmas and these beliefs. So therefore, people suddenly get provoked. They are not provoked. They're scared. They're scared of the truth, and therefore they come after you. And I think it's a wonderful life to be able to do something. I mean, I don't know if today how many people have the courage to do that, because of social media and because of this new outrageous behavior in the society, where everybody wants to cancel each other and nobody is willing to listen to new things. And that's why you see that we have globalized the world, but we have not made much progress in the field of humanities, which actually matters in day-to-day real life. And we are making progress in science and humanities and literature. In India itself, if you see, let's talk about India. In last 5 years, you name 5 top poets, Kumar Vishwas ke alawa, top 5 poets, top 5 fiction writers, top 5 non-fiction writers, people who have made real impact on the literary senses of the humanity. Very rare. You know why? Because people have started writing for the marketplace. So everybody is writing for the marketplace. And when you're writing for the marketplace, the worst thing you can do is upset your consumers. So nobody wants to upset consumers or readers. So we are writing pretty things and good things.
I think both of you are mentioning one very important point about today's society, and that is cancel culture and hate speech. So I'm sure that as influencers and as such, people that are living in public life and are so much in the public eye, I'm sure everyone has had their fair share of having to deal with this. And one of the things that we've seen, the
become a confused society.
Right. So actually, those bring up some very important points. And I completely agree when we're talking about social ambiguity, because I've heard a lot and read a lot about that as well. So I definitely agree with both sides of this argument as of right now. And so, just on a relatively lighter note, if you had to describe your artistic style in three adjectives, what would those be? Both. This is open to both of you, like Vivek sir and Shaheen ma'am, both of you.
If you have to ask me my creative writing style or creative style in 3 words, I would say simplicity, number one. I write to like very, very simple, comprehensible, and it should be a story. That's all. I don't care about any fourth or fifth thing.
That's
For me, I would say
Shaheen.
Transparent, reflective, and erratic. My style is very erratic.
Neutral chaos. Chaotic neutral. That's what we like here. For both of your writing styles, I think it would be very accurate to call it chaotic neutral. So I completely agree with that. I do think that it needs to be a little erratic for us to make sure that the reader or the viewer is hooked on to what you're doing. So those little ups and downs are very important. So I again definitely agree with the both of you. So considering that now we're almost nearing the end of this discussion, any advice that you would like to leave the younger generation of wordsmiths or artists in general with?
I would say, I'm just going to say what I've always done. Write true and hard about what hurts. Because in my experience, that's usually where you will find things worth talking about. That's basically that's the way I have approached my writing. I pay attention to what troubles me. I pay attention to what hurts, and I sit with it. And that's usually, for me, that's my excavation process is based on that. There are people who prefer to take slightly different routes, but for me, I will always say, just write true and hard about what hurts.
So Vivek sir, just 1 second before I jump onto your response, just one question I have for Shaheen ma'am after this. Ma'am, when we write true and hard, because I sometimes occasionally write myself. So do you find it difficult to be able to separate artistic license and personal biases or cultural assumptions? And if that's the case, then how do you navigate it?
I think the only way to navigate it is to acknowledge it. That's the only way to do it. If you think that we all have biases, we all have prejudice, it's hardwired. Your perspective in life comes from the cage you were held captive in. So we're all only seeing certain points of view. It's not possible that you see every single point of view. So the only way to navigate that is to acknowledge that you are limited in your understanding. You are potentially biased. I think that was also important for me when I was writing my book. I had the number one thing to acknowledge was privilege, right? I'm talking about something from an extremely privileged position. And the only way I could have written that book was by acknowledging that I was in that position. So if you're worried about, your own biases, I'd say the only thing that you can do is acknowledge it.
Fair point. Vivek sir.
I'm nobody to give any advice to anybody, but then I'll just tell you what I have learned through life, and it's your life you have to learn yourself. And what I learned is, I used to make movies first according to what people would like or what people wanted to hear, and I wasted a lot of prime youth of my life trying to impress people. Okay, and I made a lot of money, but then that didn't give me, I didn't feel I was doing something great. And then one day I realized, it was a great realization that changed my life. And I realized that our only purpose is to express ourselves. And the way we look at the world. So the way you look at the world is a very unique perception. Nobody else, like you have a signature, like expression, you know, if you show just the eyes of somebody, people recognize because that expression is so unique out of 7.5 billion people. If you see somebody is walking from the back, if you know the person, you can tell in 7.5 billion people that this is that person, which means if God has given us such unique uh, uh, um, expressions, voice, DNA, everything is so unique, then definitely your perception is so unique. So therefore, your only purpose as a creative person should be to share that unique perception with the world. So my simple mantra, I realize it's not a very complex theory. Don't impress, comma, express. Okay, just express yourself. And the day I started expressing myself, my life changed. I've never seen that kind of success, happiness, and everything around me. I mean, I have so much of love of thousands and millions of people because I express myself. I don't care about the consequences, what people are going to think, what they like me, they don't like me. And so that's what you do. Second thing I would say is always keep your humor alive. It doesn't matter whether people realize it or not. You're not a stand-up comedian. Your job is not to make people laugh. Your job is to just look at the world from a little lighter way. In fact, anybody who follows me on Twitter, a lot of people get pissed off with what I write. But actually, honestly, anybody who knows me, people, and a lot of people know me, who know me, they know that for me, it's a big comedy club Twitter. So I just write it as lines of humor. And with a lot of poker face, I make that sound so serious because it gives me insights into people's mind. Okay, and I understand that world is so humorless. Humor doesn't mean jokes. Humor doesn't mean comedy. Humor means we are not looking at the world from a simplistic, a very nuanced point of view. And this is happening because everybody is trying to impress others. Nobody is expressing. So express yourself. That's all I would say.
Thank you so much, sir. That was actually very insightful. Your line about don't impress, just express. I think that accurately, puts everything into perspective as to why you receive the best dialogue writer for Tashnaket Files. So I think that's wonderful. I think I'm going to really hold that close to myself. So with this, we're coming towards the end of this discussion. I would sincerely like to thank the both of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us here today. It's been an absolute blast. I hope you all had as much fun as I did being part of this. And I sincerely hope we can connect sometime in the future again.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening and good night.
Thank you.
I'm curious to